In the late 80s and early 90s, Toronto's Pearson International Airport, the largest airport in Canada, was bustling with activity. It had massive cargo terminals receiving shipments from all over the world, storing millions of goods daily. Despite the heavy security, including over 100 police officers and numerous video cameras, high-value products like cameras, hard disks, and computers, worth up to $500,000 each, began disappearing from the warehouse. The police formed a special task force to investigate, but were unable to find any clues. The vast size of the warehouse and the lack of a modern inventory system made it difficult to trace the missing cargo. Additionally, the delay in reporting the thefts to the police, sometimes up to a week later, meant that any potential evidence had vanished by the time investigations began. Initially, the police suspected an organized crime gang was behind the thefts, given the complexity of bypassing security and stealing large quantities of goods. However, they were wrong. The thefts were actually the work of a single truck driver named Ho Lamong, known as Mr. Smiley. Mr. Smiley, a Vietnamese immigrant, arrived in Toronto in the late 80s with only $50. Driven by a desire to become wealthy, he quickly integrated into the Asian community, building a positive reputation and earning the nickname Smiley for his constant smile. He met and married Teresa, another Vietnamese immigrant, and moved into her apartment with her teenage son, Benny. Teresa found Mr. Smiley a job as a truck driver for her shipping company, where he was responsible for picking up goods from the airport and delivering them around the city. Although the job paid only $1,600 a month, Mr. Smiley saw an opportunity. He noticed the high value of the goods he delivered and realized that if he could steal some, he could sell them for a significant profit. However, his job did not allow him to steal directly, so he needed a plan. Mr. Smiley began by strengthening his relationships with the warehouse workers. He treated them well, invited them to dinners, and gave them gifts. He identified those who needed money the most and approached them with an offer. He would pay them $2,000 to load an extra skid of goods onto his truck without telling anyone. The workers, tempted by the money and knowing the stolen cargo would not be missed for a long time, agreed. Mr. Smiley's first stolen cargo was full of electronics worth up to $100,000. He sold these goods to computer store owners at lower prices, making a significant profit. He continued this operation, each time paying workers to load extra skids of various products onto his truck. To streamline the process, he involved his wife, Teresa, who had access to detailed information about incoming cargo. She told him which flights were bringing valuable goods and where they would be stored, allowing Mr. Smiley to plan his thefts more effectively. To deal with the large quantities of stolen goods, Mr. Smiley involved his stepson, Benny, in the operation. Benny took charge of distributing the stolen electronics and proved to be an excellent salesman, creating his own network of buyers. To avoid suspicion, Benny used fake invoices and business cards, presenting himself as Joe Yang from a non-existent shipping company. The Smileys needed a safe place to store the stolen goods, so Mr. Smiley bought two houses next to each other, living in one and using the other as a warehouse. Despite the frequent movement of goods, Mr. Smiley's friendly demeanor kept neighbors from becoming too suspicious. As the internet grew in the late 90s, Mr. Smiley began selling the stolen goods on eBay, taking advantage of the platform's lack of strict identity verification. This allowed him to reach a global market and significantly increase his sales. Over 13 years, the Smileys conducted 19,000 sales on eBay, growing their operation and making millions of dollars. Despite the ongoing thefts, the police were unable to identify the culprit. Undercover operations yielded no results, and the sheer number of warehouse workers made it impossible to narrow down the suspects. It wasn't until November 2001 that they got a break. A computer store owner reported a robbery, and the police discovered that the stolen hard drives matched the serial numbers of the missing goods from the airport. The store owner revealed that he had bought the hard drives from a shipping company represented by someone named Joe, who was actually Benny. Surveillance on Benny led the police to the Smiley's house, where they saw large quantities of stolen goods. After gathering enough evidence, the police raided the house in December 2001, arresting Mr. Smiley, Teresa, and Benny. They found $1.2 million in cash and a massive amount of stolen goods. Mr. Smiley confessed to the thefts and agreed to return over $6 million in cash and property in exchange for a reduced sentence and the release of Teresa and Benny. He served a 2-year prison term. This story of a truck driver who managed to steal $4,000 worth of goods from an airport over 13 years without being caught highlights the power of intelligence, relationships, and the exploitation of systemic weaknesses.